evening, wherever you are. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're not doing too bad. So I'm just going to adjust my audio so I can get some better sound quality. But yes, I hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing, that you're feeling all right. That you're in a good place. And yes, I am the tall, friendly atheist dad because I'm tall. Gosh darn it, I'm tall. I'm friendly. Yeah, I'm chill, man. I'm atheist because I do not accept the claims that deities exist, be it Yahweh, Allah, Zeus, or any of them. And I'm a dad because I have 2 children. So, and given I am appreciably older than some of my colleagues, I'm a little bit of a work dad, just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. But yes, this is an off the cuff response with very little preparation because you fly by the seat of your pants, as they say. And yes, this I came across this list on Facebook this morning, and since my family are out doing things, I don't get that much time by myself to do things, and so yeah, I thought I'd just do an off the cuff episode response, whatever you want to call it. So this is top 10 condescending phrases atheists hear from the religious. And yes, I've heard quite a few of these, if not all of them. And yes, I agree they are condescending to various degrees. And yes, so look, if you're an atheist, then you've probably heard these, and I hope that this session will allow you to vent some frustration, or that I can at least express some of that frustration and maybe give you some guidance on how to respond to them. And if you are religious, yes, I maybe let this be maybe a lesson or a guide or just some feedback on what not to say. We're not saying that you can't try convince us. I am open-minded. If you can prove to an academically rigorous standard that a deity exists, I will happily accept that a deity exists. Whether that deity is worthy of worship or my time and efforts here on Earth, that's another question. But on the case that deities exist, if you can convince me, then I'll be convinced. But please don't convince me using any of these 10 arguments. And so the first one is, I'm praying for you. Now, I actually got this from actually one of my buddies, Will from the Church Split. Him and I are good buddies. He's a cool guy. He's a cool guy. Him and Brian. Will runs the Church Split a podcast / YouTube channel, and sometimes he has a guy called Brian on there. And yeah, so I was telling Will about a personal situation that's been going on with me, and Will said, I'm praying for you and your family. And I did not feel any level of offense at that. However, I have been in arguments online with Christians or believers, I should say, not necessarily Christians, and they will, and look, I've actually used this one myself. When I was a hardcore fundamentalist, I remember, I got into a discussion with a very, I suppose, what you would call an angry atheist. And I think at the end of the discussion, I said, "Well, look, buddy, I'll be praying for you," and he took that very badly. So yeah, and now I'm an atheist. It's like, yeah, I can see how people. And look, so if someone says to me, "I'm praying for you," okay, cool. You do that. Yeah, because to me, it's like, I'm going to ask Spider-Man to, help you out, or Superman to help you out. I suppose the only thing is, though, is this meant to, like, are they saying it in a nice way to say, look, okay, but I'm like, if they're doing it in a positive way, as in, like, I'm trying to bless you, or I'm trying to express a level of, um what's the word, I want to see good things for you. I don't want you to be hurt. I want my special friend. I want the person who I believe will help you out to help you out. Like, there's that, but then there's, like, I'm praying for you, as in, that can be said in a condescending way. And so, yeah. So if you're going to say I'm praying for you, do it do it with the acceptance of the person that you're saying it to. And said, like, Will from the church split, like, when he said it to me, I had no problem whatsoever. And I even said thank you. Like, you don't have to, like, atheists don't have to be assholes when someone says I'm praying for you. But to me, it's like, how you give it and how you take it is, like, yeah. So if you're going to say it, yeah, say it to someone who will accept something like that. But yeah, if you're getting into an argument and someone says I'm praying for you, then it's like, well, okay, that's you know the quick witty comeback is, and I'll ask Spider Man to help you out with whatever. You can. Yeah. Number two is, eventually God will reveal Himself to you. Now, it's a bit of an interesting one, because if the argument goes that God can be found and knowledge of God can be, like, people can research the rational facts and come to a rational conclusion that God exists, then you wouldn't need God to reveal Himself. He should be discoverable by our study of the natural sciences, that kind of stuff. Whereas if you believe in a God that can only be known by personal revelation, then my atheism is not my problem. My atheism is God's problem. So I'm just sit a little bit closer, because it just seems really weird that, like, we can use our knowledge of through the natural sciences, many things about this world, but the one who created the world and who interacts with the world in, without any issues, like, he has to be discovered by essentially mind tricks. Yeah, because, like, I've never heard of a story, of God revealing themselves to someone in a physical form. It's always, like, in an emotional kind of way. And the anecdote I'm gonna tell you is, there was a woman in a church that I used to go to. Now, I was still going to the church when I was an atheist, and this particular woman, her brother had died, and she gave, like, I suppose, a testimony of how she was reading the Bible and God revealed something about Himself to her through her reading of the Bible. And the first question I had was, one, how did you know it was God? And two, like, so I had this other question, like, and the other thing was, like, why does God need your suffering in order to make Himself known? Can't God just knock on your door and say, "G'day, I'm God. I'm your friendly neighborhood deity. If you need anything done, just yell out." I don't know why God can't do that. But yeah, to say eventually God will reveal himself to you, then yeah, you're essentially admitting that God can't be known unless God chooses to reveal himself to you, which is, it could be a form of Calvinism. Like, I know the Calvinists seem very strong on the idea of the elect, like people that God specifically chooses to be Christian. But yeah, it is interesting how um yeah, like, and the idea I came up with years ago was what I called the Donald Trump challenge. Now, this is back when Donald Trump was the US president. And I gotta say, one thing about Donald Trump was that he was never out of the news. It was constant Trump, Trump, Trump. It's like, well, okay. So this is the scenario that I imagine, and yeah, I like you to have a think about. On your birthday, you get a phone call from an unknown number. You pick it up, and on the other end of the line is a gentleman who wishes you a happy birthday. This gentleman sounds incredibly like the 45th president of the United States. He has the same mannerisms, same tone of voice. Um, there are many, many clues that would point to the person speaking to you on the phone as being the 45th president of the United States. The question is, how would you prove that it was the 45th president of the United States who spoke to you? Sorry, whoops. And so the answer to that question should be the same as when God speaks to you, how do you prove it was God speaking to you or God revealing himself to you? Because it just seems weird that for, someone like Donald Trump, who we eminently know exists, there are numerous ways that we would prove that Donald Trump exists. There is no doubt about it that Donald Trump exists. How would you prove that it was Donald Trump who called you on the telephone? And so to me, it should be just as provable that it was God revealing himself to you, that God, came to you, that because as far as I can see, at best, God is playing mind. If God does exist, then God is playing mind tricks in order to flicking a switch on and off in our brains, in our psyches. And so, well, if that's the case, then no amount of prayer or study or Bible reading will help you rationally know God exists, which is interesting. And to have to read the Bible and to pray and to invite God, to reveal himself to you, it sounds like you have to be part of the club you have to be in the club to know who is in the club. Well, no, you have to be in the club to know that the club exists. And it's like, well, okay, it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. But no, so if someone says eventually God will reveal himself to you, I would ask, one, how do you know that? And two, what signs should I be looking for? And the three, actually, no, I'll go back to one just very quickly. I'm praying for you. There's another question I found that I've never had a proper answer for, and that is, when you pray, how do you know Satan isn't answering the prayers instead of God? And the answer I always get is, well, it has to be God answering prayers. Why would it be Satan? Okay, that's not answering the question. How do you know it's not Satan? Well, because Satan is the bad guy. Okay, cool. That's nice. Maybe the Bible's got it wrong. Maybe Satan is the good guy. maybe Satan is a contractor for God. I don't know. All right, let me go back to number two quickly. Eventually got a room. So okay, cool. So how do I know? What signs am I looking for? And And probably what I would also say is that, okay, then my atheism, my disbelief in God is up to God. If I cannot know God rationally and intellectually, then yeah, yeah. All right, cool. I'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. Number 3 is you must not have been a true Christian. And yes, I've had this one a fair few times. A fair few times. And there's a few responses I have to that. The first one is, what is a true Christian? And usually the responses go, true Christians read the Bible. And to which I replied, I've read the Bible cover to cover twice, and I used to run Bible studies. So, I used to read, I've read the Bible. I would wager a bet to say I've read the Bible more than most Christians out there. True Christians go to church. Well, I've been in 4 different churches throughout my time as a Christian. Not only that, I served in the church. I think when I left my church after I deconverted, at the time I left the church, and look, I was an undercover atheist. At the time, I was an atheist going to church. I was in the music team, I was in the photography team, and I was helping with the car park ushering team as well. So, like, I would wager a bet, as I say, I have served more in church than most Christians. And then the person may respond with, "Well, true Christians believe in Jesus." Well, that's what I did, especially through numerous mental health struggles, deaths in the family, career struggles, or all this kind of stuff. So, at what point was I not a true Christian? And then I did hear one person in an argument on Twitter came back and said, "True Christians don't believe in Jesus; they believe on Jesus." Well, what does believing on Jesus mean? So the problem with this is, so what is a true Christian? And I don't think there is a a bona fide definite way we can know. So to me, a true Christian is essentially someone who goes to church and looks like they enjoy it. It's really about it. Because the problem then is, or the other problem is that let's say I wasn't a true Christian, then I had people, like, in every church I went to, people accepted me as Christian. So are they deceived as well? All throughout my university years, I was a Christian. I was a part of numerous. So I was a part of one on-campus fellowship group, but I was friends with numerous Christians on campus in other fellowship groups. And it's like, well, okay, were those Christians deceived as well? And in a particular church I went to, the international leadership accepted me as a Christian. So, like, were they deceived as well? And you could then come back and say, well, there are lots of deceived Christians out there. Well, okay, how do you know who is a deceived Christian? How do you know who isn't a true Christian? Because then the other problem with you must not have been a true Christian is that if a true Christian is someone who never leaves the faith, then essentially what you're saying is Christianity is an authoritarian cult, an authoritarian cult that you're not allowed to leave once you enter. Because let's say, yes, you'd believe God exists and Jesus is the Son of God, but you don't like God. Okay, you can leave the church and stop being a Christian. That doesn't, yeah, I find this, yeah. Does that make you not a true Christian? It's like, yeah, what? So when someone says you were never a true Christian, I would ask you, okay, how do you define a true Christian? And every single time the answer I get is some sort of subjective opinion. There is no objective way of knowing who is and isn't a true Christian. It's a true Christian is whatever you personally believe a true Christian to be. And in modern day America, I would say that the current definition of a true Christian is a Trump Republican. Is essentially, the current definition of a true Christian. It's, or at least someone who is very, very conservative. Number 4 is one day you'll know the truth. And look, essentially, number 4 is a rehash of number 2. But what is the extra step of when you die or as you're about to die, you will understand the truth will be revealed. And it's like, can you name me one particular? Well, look, one day I suppose one day you know the truth, and how do you know that? How do you know you have the truth? What's to say you're not? What's to say you're not wrong? Yeah, how do you know you're not wrong? And some said to me, one day you'll know the truth. Okay. Cool. All right. Maybe one day you'll know the truth. There's like, I just hope to, and look, I like Matt Dillahunty's take on it, where he said he wants to believe as many correct things as possible and as few false things as possible. Then I think that, if you keep an open mind and, be curious about the world around you, then but like, I suppose, and also, if someone says one day you know the truth, then like, why can't you prove your truth to me now? Like, what convinced you that you have the truth? Oh, I've got a Bible verse. Okay, cool. Why should I? That's cool. I've got. We can play books at 20 paces if you want. But yes, one day, So, okay, cool. That's whatevs. Cool. As I said, I think that like if someone is convinced that they have the truth, then they should be able to, I suppose, put together a causal chain of how they knew, 1, God exists, 2, he has a son, 3, that son is Jesus, and 4, supernatural elements, all this kind of stuff. There should be a whole causal chain, or at least a very an established causal chain that you can reasonably infer, A to Z. Yeah. Number 5 is you can't have morals without God. And I say you definitely can. Morals are, morals change, and morals are culturally defined, and it's so I suppose the question is, how do you establish you can't have morals without God? Because I would call myself a moral atheist. I do my best to not break the law. I have never murdered anyone, never stolen anything, except for basketball. I did steal some candy once from a store when I was young, but that's silly me. I'd be as truthful as possible. Except in some circumstances where sometimes I don't know things and I may exaggerate, but look, that's very few and far between. But I generally try to be a decent person who, but like I said, I've never murdered, never committed adultery, never, I've never stolen someone's ass, or my neighbor's ass, my neighbor's servant, my neighbor's wife. Anyway, onto the point at hand. How do you prove you can't have morals without God? And usually the argument is that throughout every single culture, there are numerous, I suppose, universals. Like every culture has rules against stealing and killing and, adultery and all this kind of stuff. And to which I'd say that, every at various points in time, various cultures have things about slavery. Some cultures have, a lot more open about drug usage. Some cultures, are completely against drugs. Some cultures have a 7 day a week or 6.5 day a week work culture. Like, whereabouts. And also, in some cultures, they execute people for crimes. In some cultures, they don't. Yeah, I suppose at what stage, um, the other thing is, like, if you're assuming, like, the argument that people have the law written on their hearts, well, the law also says, don't work on the Sabbath. The law says, don't boil a goat in its mother's milk. Keep the festival of leavened bread. This is from the second set of Ten Commandments. There's, it's, I work on the Sabbath. Actually, technically, because this is Saturday morning, I'm actually working, but I don't. You know, okay, cool. It's so this whole idea that the law is written on our hearts. Okay, what part of the law is written on our hearts? What do you mean by that? Are we supposed to have this magical knowledge? I think most cultures have prohibitions against killing and stealing and all that because of the detrimental effects that those things have on society. And for example, like, thou shalt not commit adultery. There is no, like, so in Western society, there is no law against adultery. In Islamic culture, yes. So, which part, like, does that mean Islamic societies are closer to God than Western societies, or not? This is, I don't quite, I don't quite get that. And look, any dispassionate study of history will show you that morals have ebbed and flowed over time, and even in case of killing people, self defense. Self defense is a legal exception. But then even within self-defense, there are various back and forths about, how much force you can use, if someone is running away, if, what sort of weapon, all this kind of stuff. So if the law of God is written on our hearts, we shouldn't be able to make these kind of weird, literally get out of jail scenarios. And like in America, you have like the castle defense, and then in some states you don't have the castle defense. And then it's like, well, yeah. And then, for example, the laws of trial by jury, with rules of evidence and procedure, procedural fairness. That is not in any Bible I've ever read. you know, but it's a stronghold. It's like a fundamental of Western society. Democracy. There's nothing in the Bible about democracy. Is that immoral as well, or is that? Yeah. So I find this whole thing about you can't have morals without God. The other thing is that God Himself changes morality on numerous occasions. For example, slavery. We see in Exodus 21 and in Leviticus 25 and other passages where the creator of the universe is endorsing slavery. But now we're told by modern Christians that God is against slavery. But then you go back to AIG, who will say that, oh, slavery was a thing, but it was a good thing. Well, hold on, guys, make up your mind. That foreign women, does God allow you to marry foreign women or not? And it's, there are verses on either side that can be used to justify mixed race marriages or not. And it's like, well, I'm in a mixed race marriage myself, and I know pastors who are in mixed race marriages, and it's like, well, yeah, but then there are people in this day and age who are Christians who are against mixed race marriages. And, so is God against mixed race marriages or not? And it's like, well, okay, even if you can't have morals without God, God seems to change his mind almost in relation to the culture that you're in. It's really, really weird. It's really, really weird. But yeah, so if someone says to me, you can't have morals without God, then like, I suppose the question is, how do you prove that? And then also, how do you deal with the problem of psychopaths? Because psychopaths are people who don't have the normal levels of empathy and compunction that we do, that forms our moral computations, let's say. So yeah, and I have heard one pastor say to me, psychopaths don't exist. There's no such thing as a psychopath. The psychopaths are just people who have given into their desires. It's like that's so fucking cringy. Very cringy thing to say. Anyway, if I think of more, I'll come back to it. Number 6 is God still loves you. Okay. You have to exist to be able to love someone, and I don't like. You can say God still loves you as as a philosophical concept, but how do you actually prove that? That's and let's say God did love me, he seems to love me from afar and leaves me to my own devices. It's a bit like saying, uh, it's a bit like saying, Jill Biden loves you. Well, who am I to Jill Biden? Or Anthony Albanese's partner, Jodie Hayden. That's right. Jodie Hayden loves you. Well, okay, who am I to Jodie Hayden? It's like, well, okay, cool. If God, then I would say God still. If someone says to me, God still loves me, I go, "Oh, okay. And so, what difference does that make to me? What difference in my life does God loving me have? Like sorry, on a rational basis, what effects am I looking for? What sort of, you know, yeah, it's anyway. Number 7 is, and I've heard this one a few times. Tell you that much. You deny God because you want to sin. And to which I would say, no, me personally, I've come to a rational conclusion that it's very highly likely that deities do not exist. It's not like there's nothing. Yeah, like I didn't leave the faith because I decided I love sin. I left the faith because I couldn't prove to myself to the same way that we'd prove the earth is round or that my wife is my wife. I could not prove to that same standard that deities exist. So, yeah. And like, I suppose, what sin am I committing that I have left the faith for? And the other thing is that if I wanted to sin, I would actually stay a Christian because I know that God will forgive me of whatever sins. And for example, the Catholic Church, that's like probably the easiest example to go to. But even in fundamentalist Baptist churches and modern day charismatic churches, and the name that comes to mind is Ravi Zacharias. Yeah, Ravi Zacharias was like a world famous Christian apologist. And it came out that after he died, he was having inappropriate relations with numerous women. He had like a slush fund of money. He had an apartment in Thailand that he put his personal masseuse in, who was female, by the way. Um, you know, so if his belief in God didn't stop him from committing sexual misdeeds, then you can't say to me, I deny God because I want to sin. People who believe in God have sinned just as much, if not more, than people who don't believe in God. It's yeah, it's and to say deny God, that's no. I have no. I can say there's nothing to deny. I am not like, for me to deny God would to be acknowledge he exists, but then refuse to believe in him. That's not the case. Sorry, too close to the microphone. it's not the case that I believe God exists, but I refuse to believe in him. It's that I am not convinced he exists, that any deities at all exist in the first place. And I suppose another response to you deny God, but you want to sin is, well, you deny Zeus, you deny Aten, you deny, Thor. There are plenty of other deities. Even in the Bible, there are numerous other deities mentioned. Like, you deny them because you want to sin. And I usually find that I do not get a coherent answer to that particular response. But yes, I do not deny God because I want to sin. I am not convinced there is a deity to deny. And yeah, if you can prove to me that, now I usually hear this one from presuppositionalists, and I find presuppositional apologetics to be the very worst kind, because it's assuming the conclusion of the argument. It's like, well, if you assume God exists, then what are you proving? It's like, yeah, a very, very, very poor form of argumentation. The next one is number 8. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. Okay, cool. Thank you for being condescending and for telling me that you think less of me. That is like, that is okay, cool. Like that in no way convinces me that there is a deity. And, there are religious people who there are religious people, or people who follow certain religions that do like really bad things, or things that are weird. If you go to India, there are numerous religions where people do really weird things, like not eat, or grow their beard really far out. Or one of my favorite examples is back in ancient Rome. There was the cult of Attis and Cybele, and one part of the, I think in March it was, in the month equivalent to March, where there's a day where men would run down the street in women's clothing and castrate themselves in public. So and the reason I bring this up is, if you're going to say I'm a fool because I don't believe in God, well, look at all these other religions full of people who do really foolish things, like cutting off their penises, or growing their beard really long, or their fingernails really long, or just like really, really weird, or picking up snakes. I would, and like, to me, like, the Appalachian snake handlers who pick up snakes because of their faith and then die from snake bite, and then go, well, look, I'm still going to pick up snakes. Like, the Bible says they will pick up snakes and they won't be hurt. They pick up snakes, they get hurt, they die, and they go, look, the Bible says, this, but this didn't happen, but I'm still going to believe the Bible anyway. Like, that to me is foolish. If the Bible makes a promise and you act on that promise and the promise doesn't happen, you can't say that the Bible is like, God keeps his promises. Well, yeah, the Bible is true. Yeah, and then keep on. Yeah, no, sorry, it does not compute. But no, so if someone says to me, the fool says in heart there is no God, okay, cool. Like, I would take that person as trying to be offensive, and I go, okay, cool, thank you, and end of conversation. There's not much more. If you're determined to think less of me because I don't believe in your deity, then okay. And look, I will say that atheists do the same thing as well when they come across a Christian and they see Christians as lesser because they're Christians. That shouldn't happen. We should be in a society where, like, you can ridicule the belief, sure, but the person, like, there's still a person. Like, if you're engaging in a debate, then like, just be chill, be cool. Don't be an asshat. It's, yeah. So yeah. Number 9, you're just going through a stage. Okay, all right. Look, it's possible. I've had this one a couple of times in various forms. Number 9 and number 4. So number 4 was one day you know the truth, and number 9, actually maybe number 6 as well. God still loves you can be part of number 9. You're just going through a stage. Okay, all right. Well, we all go through stages. Okay, how do I know you're not in a Christian stage? And I find that usually stops the conversation because there's no good answer to how do I know you're not in a. And look, I was asked once, aren't you going through a Christian stage? And I'm a lifelong Christian. And look at me now. Look at me now. Look, I could be going through a stage. I could become a Christian again one day. I'm not going to dismiss that possibility. What I'm going to say is that I'm not going to return to faith. I want knowledge, not faith. So if there is a deity out there, I want to know, I want it to be rationally proven that there's a deity. I don't want to have to rely on fuzzy feelings and emotions and all this kind of stuff. I want to prove a deity exists in the same way that I can prove Joe Biden is currently the president as of time of recording, or that Anthony Albanese is the Prime Minister of Australia. It shouldn't be that hard. Number 10. Number 10 could be an extension of number 9, actually. Number 10, you're being fooled by the devil. Okay. How do you prove that? One, how do you prove the devil exists? Aside from an a priori belief, how do you know that I'm being fooled by the devil? Like what facts have I misinterpreted to come to the conclusion that neither God nor Satan exists? And it's like, I know people will say the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convicting the water doesn't exist. Okay, cool. That's because the problem is then this reduces Christianity to be a massive psychological operation. Christianity is a big psyop. And I find that, look, it's possible, though very, very, very unlikely, because that would mean essentially that we're in a Christian matrix. If everything we know about the natural world is because of a big psychological operation, then okay, that's yeah. You're essentially like how you could say back to the Christian, how do you know you're not being fooled by God? There's it comes down to how do you prove your statement, and yeah, I this is something you would say just because you don't have any better argument for your belief. And I cover this on an episode of my podcast, the Tall Friendly Atheist Said podcast, found wherever good podcasts are found, and probably where bad podcasts are found as well. S.J. Thompson, there was an episode, I think episode 94, 93, where I responded to, there's a video by S.J. Thompson. It said 5 reasons you should be an atheist. And one of the arguments was that atheists are being fooled by the father of lies. I think the argument was that God loves us, but atheists are being fooled by the father of lies. And it's like, well, okay, how do you prove that? Aside from the a priori belief that it's true, how do you prove that it's true? And I don't think you can. That's the thing. I really don't think you can. But yeah, anyway, let me before I end this brief episode, let me just try to think. Is there anything else? I'm praying for you. It's like, cool, thanks. Eventually, God will reveal Himself to you. Okay, so you're saying I can't know God rationally. Okay, cool. You must not have been a true Christian. Well, how do I know you are? What if you leave the faith? Does that mean you weren't a true Christian? One day you know the truth. Okay, I hope so. That is, but if you have the truth, convince me using sound logic that what you believe is true. You can't have morals without God. So yes, you can. And also, where does God get His morals from? Because little bit of rant here. Let's say God does decide our morals, then you have an inescapable dilemma. If God decides morals, then morality is subjective. It's just, if morality is essentially God's opinion, then God could, and I've raised this hypothetical on the podcast, God could appear in the sky worldwide and say, you must rob a bank to enter heaven. Now, let's just say a hypothetical does that. So what are you going to do? Are you going to argue morals with God and say, God, why would you tell us to rob a bank? And God just said, because I fucking will feel like it. Assuming God swears, because maybe God does swear. God says, because I flaming well feel like it. I want to see lots of banks robbed. Social justice. There you go, social justice. And what are you going to do? Like, say, God, why would you tell me to rob a bank? Because I feel like it. Yeah, that's Or the other problem is that God gets his morality from something external to him, in which case we can get our morality from something external to us as well. It's not hard. The shambolic William Lane Craig defense is God gets from his nature. Then one, what a stupid argument that is. And two, who made God to have the nature that he does for him to decide morality by his nature? And the other problem with that is that makes genocide good, because there are instances of genocide in the Old Testament. There's no argument there. There's instances of slavery in the Old Testament. In fact, the first temple was built with slaves. So that means killing people and slavery is good. So okay, that if that's part of God's nature, then okay, cool. Whatevs. God still loves you. Okay, what does that mean for me? You deny God because you want to sin, and one, how do you prove that? And two, if I wanted to sin, I would still be a Christian, because then I know I'd get forgiveness. The fool says his heart there is no God. Well, thank you very much. Have a nice day. End of conversation. I'm just going through a stage. Well, possible, but how do you prove that? And how do I know you're not going through a stage? And 10, you're being fooled by the devil. Then, yeah, that's cool. How do you prove that? That's that's a statement that carries a lot of weight, but it's heavy but has no weight. I'll say that much. But anyway, I'm going to finish here and go have some lunch. It is now about 12:45 on a Saturday afternoon. And yeah, wherever you are, whatever you happen to be doing, I hope you're well. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day. You don't have to be an atheist to have a good day. You can be a Christian. You can be a Muslim listening to this, and I still want you to have a good day. Go have a good day. Enjoy yourself. Be productive. Go learn something. Go be there for your family. Just do stuff. Anyway, adios. See ya.